The Hittite Empire was one of the greatest powers of the Bronze Age. Its seeds were sowed in the 18th century BCE when King Anita, a ruler of Kusara, conquered much of central Anatolia and declared himself the Great King. His realm consisted of the Neshite-speaking core, centered around the cities of Nesha and Kusara, and the Hattic-speaking lands, which chiefly included polities such as Hattusa and Zalpuva. Hattusa itself was destroyed during Anita's conquest. The king had cursed the city and proclaimed that no successor of his should ever resettle it. When Anita passed away in about 1720 BCE, his realm was left without a firm hand to hold it together. Soon enough, it was fractured into several polities, which were notably divided between the Hattic and Neshite speakers. Unfortunately, there is a lack of clarity on what exactly happened in the following period. While we do have a lot of attested names, the evidence is extremely scarce, making the subsequent events very difficult to determine. It seems that a ruler named Zuzu succeeded Anita on the throne of Nesha. Whether he was a son or relative of Anita is not known. Moreover, Zuzu was also recorded in two of the inscriptions as Great King of Walaxina, a place completely unknown and not mentioned anywhere else in the ancient texts. Whether Walaxina was Zuzu's place of origin, or a place he originally ruled over before becoming the king in Nesha, or a place with some other significance to him, we simply do not know. Initially styled just as a king, Zuzu soon adopted the title of Great King. Just like Anita, Zuzu had Storm God as his personal deity and a bull as a symbol on his royal seal, perhaps a connection to the dynastic origin in Kusara. His chief cupbearer was a man named Tudhalia, possibly belonging to the same royal clan, but not to be confused with the later Hittite kings of the same name. While Zuzu's kingdom certainly included the Neshite-speaking lands, his authority over the Hattic portion of the realm was unclear. The dynastic branch in the north was possibly connected to the former King Huzia of Zalpuva and had its own aspirations for a great kingdom. Soon enough, a chieftain also named Huzia of the Hatti would rise to prominence as the head of this dynasty. Once again, we are not sure if this Huzia was contemporary to Zuzu or came immediately afterwards. Whatever the case may be, Zuzu's reign was possibly contested, as he was the final recorded great king of Nesha. At the end of the 18th century, Nesha was destroyed and was no longer a major center in Anatolia. It is unknown whether Zuzu himself was the one who was defeated, or yet another power struggle broke out after he passed away. The end of his reign often set at about 1710 BCE. Nevertheless, by the turn of the century, Nesha was no more. The most significant relic left of it was the language, which was still called the Neshite and continued to serve as the official language. It is at this time that Tudhalia the cupbearer reportedly emerges in Sanahuita, a city to the northeast of Hattusa. Evidently, Tudhalia would have survived the fall of Nesha and continues his and Zuzu's dynasty in a new capital in the north. His son and successor is said to be Pusharuma. It is also around this time that the mentioned Huzia of the Hatti emerges as the head of the northern Hattic dynasty. His connections with Zalpuva make him a possible grandson of earlier Huzia of Zalpuva, a ruler that was notably defeated by Great King Anita. These reconstructions by the scholars are by no means certain, for they are based on very limited and fragmentary evidence, which is only enough for us to draw hypotheses on the relations between these post-Hittite individuals and the events that followed. Hosea of the Hatti would have ascended to the throne at some time around 1690 BCE. There are contradictory theories when it comes to both his and Tudhaliya's successors. These successors, particularly Pavaktemla and Labarna, are of highly disputed genealogy. According to some scholars, Pavaktemla and Labarna were brothers, both sons of Pusharuma and thus grandsons of Tudhaliya the cupbearer. Other scholars put forward a version in which Pavaktemla was a son of Hosea, while Labarna was a son of an unnamed lord of the city of Hurma, appointed by Hosea and possibly related to Tudhaliya. What is agreed upon is that Hosea had a daughter named Tavanana, who got married to Labarna. Labarna was subsequently declared heir to the whole kingdom and succeeded to the throne at some time around 1680 BCE. Labarna, the king of the Hatti, is thus considered the first ruler of the Hittites, a period known as the Old Hittite Kingdom. We should note that the terms Hittites and Hittite language are modern terms used to designate the period between the foundation of the Old Kingdom under Labarna in 1680 and the fall of the New Kingdom during the Bronze Age collapse in 1180 BCE. As for the Hittites themselves, they simply adopted and used the name Hatti, in reference and perhaps respect to the land of the Hattic speakers which became the heartland of their kingdom. On the other hand, what we call the Hittite language was known as the Neshite language to the Hittites, and was the official tongue spoken by the ruling dynasty, which originated in Nesha and Kusara, and perhaps traced its lineage to the original great king Anita. There is not a lot of available information when it comes to Labarna's reign. His capital, at least initially, might have been Sanahuita, the city where he was proclaimed heir and successor to the throne. It appears that the subsequent Hittite kings adopted Labarna as their title name. Some scholars hypothesize that he was actually the same person as his successor, Hattushili. What we do know is that his reign was not entirely peaceful. Pavaktemla, who was either his brother or a son of Hosea, contested Labarna's ascension to the throne. He reportedly led a rebellion, which was eventually defeated by the king towards the beginning of the reign. King Labarna ruled until about 1650 BCE. His chosen heir was not a son but a nephew of his wife Tavanana. The king chose Hattushili as his successor. Hattushili was either a son of Labarna's rival Pavaktemla or of another brother of Queen Tavanana. Either way, the inscriptions show that Hattushili was a grandson of Labarna's predecessor, whether Hosea, Pusharuma, or Tudhaliya, while Labarna himself had been adopted. The new king in turn adopted the name Labarna as his title name, a practice that would continue among the subsequent Hittite rulers. Hattushili is also noted for moving the capital of the kingdom to Hattusha, the very city that was destroyed and cursed by King Anita a century before. Also, Hattushili proudly called himself a man of Kusara, a reference to the ancient capital of his dynasty, going back all the way to the great King Anita and his father Pitana. Our series on the history of the Hittites will continue, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. This was WanaxTV.